Hi you guys, welcome back to the channel for another video and another year here at What Mia Did Next. I am so excited for this year on this channel. I'm going to do a video this week about the crazy year that was 2016 and what we've got to look forward to in 2017. But today, the first video of the year was actually one that was spurred on by you guys. I had a couple of emails from you guys when I was on my break about this initiative that Freelee the Banana Girl is doing on her channel. And we don't really do reaction or response videos here on the channel unless they're really directly in line with eating disorders or body image, or there's a message being put out there which is perpetuating the stigma that we're fighting so hard to change. She started this new initiative called Come and Live with Freelee, in which she offers fellow YouTubers the opportunity to come and live with her and for her to teach them her vegan lifestyle. Why it specifically was of interest to me was because there are two YouTubers who she's offered this opportunity to, and one is suspected of experiencing a pretty serious eating disorder, but she hasn't come out and said it herself, so I'm not going to say her name. And most recently, a week ago, she offered the same thing to Simply Nessa 15. I knew that. Publicly and bravely, very recently, came out and admitted that she is suffering from an eating disorder. And from what she mentioned in her video, it seems anxiety and depression as well, but she very explicitly came out and said she's definitely suffering from an eating disorder. So Freelee has responded to that video to say, come and live with me, let me teach you my vegan lifestyle, let me teach you about eating disorders, and essentially let me heal your eating disorder. For anyone who's been following this channel for a while, it is no surprise that I have taken just a smidgen of an issue with this video. And then when I actually watched it, it was the language and the terminology and the attitude that she had towards eating disorders, which I found not only baffling, but certainly by the end of it, fairly reprehensible. I'm not going to do a reaction to a reaction video because then we fall into a black hole of YouTube and we all may possibly die. I will be just posting a couple of snippets of what I wanted to respond to. And if you know me well enough, you know I'm not manipulating any of this or taking it out of context, and you're more than welcome to look up the video and go and watch it yourself.
I've dealt with like thousands of girls with eating disorders over the last decade, and more than decade actually, and I understand. I've suffered myself from an eating disorder, so Vanessa, I can totally understand where you are coming from and where it feels kind of like hopeless. You don't know what to do, you don't know why you keep self-sabotaging, that sort of thing, but it really has all to do with nutrition and getting the nutrition to your brain. You know, if your body's suffering from deficiencies, then your brain is not going to function properly. If your diet is insufficient, then you're not going to be thinking sufficiently, if that makes sense.
Okay, so the first thing I've got an issue with, which we'll touch on a little bit later as well, is the fact that Freelee refers to the fact that she's had an eating disorder herself and that she's dealt with thousands of girls who have suffered from eating disorders. Personal experience does not equate to having the authority to treat somebody else. I can't believe that it's reached the point where we need to make that distinction between somebody who is a public personality and somebody who is actually qualified to instruct or advise other people on anything to do with their medical state or their health or their fitness. But that's usually what I'm here commenting on when we do these kinds of response videos. It seems that people are becoming less and less discerning about who they're taking their medical advice from. And as we know here in the recovery community, recovering from an eating disorder is an incredibly complex, multifaceted process. So to say that you are equipped to help somebody else simply because you've experienced it and you've heard from numerous people who have suffered from eating disorders as well is beyond ignorant. It seems sort of egocentric. It would be similar to me suddenly deciding that I was in a position to treat you guys just because we have an open dialogue here about eating disorders and the fact that my treatment has worked for me. That's why I'm constantly referring you to people who are professionals, who are qualified, who are psychologists or psychiatrists, and to shop around and find someone who is fantastic in their field and qualified within eating disorders, not just as psychologists and psychiatrists, because I am not qualified. Freelee is not qualified. Let's jump to this next section.
She's really providing a good example of what happens when you don't feed your brain enough nutrition. When you don't get enough glucose, in particular, enough carbohydrates, but just calories in general, the brain can start to do crazy things, okay? It can start to fail, you know, and this is what she's experiencing. She's just getting super sensitive. She's experiencing this anxiety and the depression, and it's just this cycle that you get caught up in if you keep under eating, keep on, dieting and cutting the carbs and that sort of thing. It can literally make people go crazy. It can make people commit suicide.
Okay, so this to me was absolutely baffling. This is not a physical condition, and to refer to it in these terms is incredibly misleading and perpetuates that stigma that we're constantly trying to fight, that it's a matter of just eating. And I think this is when I started to get quite irate at how she was approaching this person who's brave enough to have such a public platform and come out and say that she's suffering from an eating disorder, because this almost falls under the umbrella of just eat. Talking about you're not getting enough carbohydrates or enough glucose, you're certainly not getting enough calories. No kidding, she's got an eating disorder. But she's not electing to not eat. She's not electing to starve herself or binge or purge or whatever the actual manifestation of her eating disorder might be. It's being spurred on by a psychological process, by a mental illness. So to use terms like diet, to boil it down to something as basic as you're not getting the right levels of nutrition in order to function, and if you were, you would be cured, is beyond ignorant. It's obtuse.
Like, Vanessa, this isn't actually the real you, okay? You need to understand this. This is the undernourished you, the person who is not actually feeding themselves correctly.
Of course she's not. She's just admitted to having an eating disorder and stated in her own video that she's tried so many times to just get on top of it and feed herself properly and behave normally with food, and she's unable to. So to boil it down to simplistic physical terms isn't terribly helpful when she's made it clear that hasn't worked, because it's not a physical issue, it's a psychological issue. Yes, she's undernourished, but she's also depressed and anxious and clearly suffering from something mental and psychological. It's not a matter of getting a few more carbs into her system.
This is not your brain functioning at the level at which it's meant to be functioning. This is the level that is, making you super sensitive to comments and to haters and that sort of thing. It's not a healthy state. So you need to get your brain in a healthy state, and that's where I come into it, okay? I'm not going to listen to it anymore because it's like a 20-minute video.
That's incredible. You want to treat someone whose video you can't even watch in its entirety? Amazing.
See what's happening here. Vanessa definitely needs to eat more carbohydrates and calories in general, and she needs to get out of this eating disorder mentality.
Just eat, just eat, just eat, have a burger, just eat. Never heard that one before.
And Vanessa, you need to understand that you're not crazy, okay? You're not crazy. It's just that your brain is not receiving the fuel and the nutrients that it needs to function correctly.
It's just that you're not getting the calories you need. It's just that you're not getting the carbohydrates you need. It's incredible how easy she makes this sound, and we'll get to that right now.
So I would love to have you here. I'd love to coach you through this, to show you how easy the lifestyle is, and to show you just how easy it is to, feel your best. When you are addressing your basic needs, it is so easy.
Okay. Anyone who's ever been through eating disorder recovery, anyone who is going through eating disorder recovery, you are not alone if you are totally offended by the implication that eating disorder recovery is easy, or if that we all just tried to recover by going vegan and meeting our basic needs when we don't even think we deserve to be here, that it's easy. It takes between 3 to 7 years to fully recover from an eating disorder. And as I've mentioned, it's an incredibly complex, difficult process to go through, one which can see you relapse many times, one which can see you lose relationships, friendships, your life. I've never met anyone who's gone through recovery and would ever classify it as easy or simple, or that there was a quick fix. And the idea that not just Simply Nessa, but Simply Nessa's followers who would come across this channel, and certainly Freelee's followers, are being sold a lie and a guarantee of a simple, easy recovery, when this is the #1 psychiatric illness, #1 killer in Australia. And she didn't just say it once, she threw it in there a few times. To classify recovery as easy is reprehensible. Put that out to an impressionable young audience is so incredibly wrong. It's just wrong. I find it amazing, Freelee, that you could have suffered from an eating disorder and can give other people the impression that recovery is easy. That's why I have this channel, because I want people to know the reality of recovery and to have realistic expectations of not only themselves but the process, and realistic expectations of what treatment is like. And this, I will say it point blank, is not treatment. This is fraudulent. To say that you have a cure-all, an answer to eating disorders, which is purely diet-based, to completely ignore the psychological elements of eating disorders when it is the #1 killer among psychiatric illnesses in this country, is disgraceful, to be honest. And that is my final point on this topic, because I think that it highlights something that we do discuss quite often on this channel, particularly when it is a response reaction video to somebody putting misinformation out there in terms of health or fitness or eating disorders or recovery. It's frightening that this even needs to be highlighted, but just because somebody has a large following, just because somebody has a loud voice and a big channel, doesn't mean that they are qualified or that they are capable of treating you, of advising you, of giving you any kind of guidance outside of anecdotal guidance that is specific to their experience, such as when we discuss here what worked for us, what didn't work for us, more as a community builder, not as any way of treating each other or trying to cure each other's eating disorders. When it reaches that point, talking about treatment, if somebody who doesn't have qualifications isn't telling you to go and speak to somebody with qualifications, run as fast as you can. Whether it's eating disorder recovery, whether it's fitness, whether it's health. If they are not qualified to treat you, you should not be listening to them. And if you want a good example of how badly this can go when you follow the advice of someone who purely has a good platform and marketing strategy, you only have to look as far as Belle Gibson. If you don't know who Belle Gibson is, she was a young woman who claimed to have an inoperable brain tumor, which was also terminal, and said that she was treating this brain tumor successfully with a whole foods diet, with no conventional medicine, no radio, no chemo, purely a whole foods diet. She built an entire empire around the claim. She wrote cookbooks, she had an app on the App Store, all of which contain information saying that she was treating an inoperable brain tumor that she was going to die of through this diet. It then came out that she never had brain cancer. She never had any kind of cancer. She was a fraud. And unfortunately, because we are so reticent to question our idols and question the people we look up to and revere and seem to have a level of knowledge or power just because they're exposed through social media or whatever it might be. Nobody questioned her. And so a huge number of her followers who were vulnerable and were suffering from cancer took this advice, looked up to her, believed her, and put themselves in serious physical jeopardy. So as much as it might seem like it's a big claim to say that this is dangerous and that this is beyond ignorant, that it is reprehensible and unforgivable, with an example like Belle Gibson having only happened and been exposed a couple of years ago, I can't understand why people aren't more careful with who they look to for advice as serious as what is going on with your brain and your body. Just like you would take your car to a mechanic who was qualified to service the car, don't take your body to somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. Please be discerning. Please do your research. And to Freelee, I understand that your mission in life is to save the animals, to spread the word of veganism. This is not the way to do it. These are not the impressionable, vulnerable people to wave your vegan flag for. As somebody with an eating disorder history, you should know better. Okay guys, that is it for the first video of 2017. I will be back at the end of the week. Let me know what you think about this situation in the comments below. Come and find me on Instagram and Twitter under What Mia Did Next. I'll see you guys at the end of the week. In the meantime, Happy New Year, happy 2017. It's going to be an amazing one. Much love and take care. Bye guys.